Is that how you'd like me to address you?
Sure, you can call me Reverend Erica. That's absolutely perfect.
Okay, wonderful. Well, so with the Underground Railroad, and then I spoke with somebody just recently about boat people from Southeast Asia. So she was in Vietnam on the ground, and then you came across as a guest, and the Tubman Travel Project. Went to your website. I was like, oh, this is exactly what I want because I am
Fantastic.
threading this thread through all these historical stories, including the Holocaust, of where were the women? Because in
Uh-huh.
history, the women aren't even identified. When they erased the Black history of 100 years here, they erased all the women who were participant in abolitionist movements or the railroad.
Yeah.
And so it was Mrs. Governor somebody.
Right. Right. Right.
And
Absolutely.
and I've been wondering, what can we learn from history that we can carry through?
Right.
So I am just so now I don't have to thread that needle because now somebody is doing in real time the learned lessons from history
Yes.
and such an inaction. I I want to hear all about it.
Well, yes, my work is very in action, that's for sure. Well, I'm thinking about where I can start. No, I have, of course, lots of points of interest, but
Yes,
I probably am thinking about the best place for me to begin is how the Tubman Travel Project came to be.
I think that would be a lovely beginning. So our
Okay.
audience are women over 40, but specifically white women is my target market because I want them to move from ally to advocate to accessory.
Right,
Okay.
right.
And
It's fantastic. That's a fantastic place to move women through, for
yes.
sure.
And we don't know what we don't know. And so my conversations are to keep me real and to look behind the curtain of whatever the academic presentation is to say, so what does that feel like and look like in real time?
Right.
And Resilience Reimagined is our thread for season 3. So
Oh, fantastic.
we are absolutely not just redefining, you have reimagined some stuff here.
That is very true. And it's interesting because we're in a time where we must reimagine actually our very existence or we will perish, right? That's the reality.
Yes.
And so it's that critical, and so let me bring it to how the Tubman Travel Project emerged 5 years ago in Texas when Senate Bill 8 was passed. I personally have been working in this field for 30 years, but when that bill was passed, specifically, I was working with young women and actually women of all ages as they navigated their reproductive choices.
Mhm.
And some were already well along in their reproductive choices, but needed to go back and revisit them. And
Mhm.
if you can imagine, I'm 54, I'll be 55. There
Mhm.
were lots of reproductive choices I made, including the 2 abortions I had,
Mhm.
when I was 14 and then 18, that
Mhm.
revisiting them to see how they intersected with my life choices now became critical. And lots of women have to do that.
Yes.
And there's also the young women as they begin to make choices, some to choose abortion, some not, how they navigate that. And so my work was there. And at midnight, September 1st, 5 years ago, when the Senate bill in Texas went into effect, I lived in Texas. I received a text from one of the women that I was working with. Most of the women ages 20 and under, I work with via text. That's their medium. That's fine. She sent me a text message that said, how am I going to get out of this state? I can't even figure out how to get a bus across town. And in that moment, I said, don't worry, I'll help you. Now, I was not clear because it was midnight what help looked like, but I did know that I would help her. And that is as a result of the help that I received. Interesting enough, when I had my first abortion at 14 in California in very progressive Berkeley, there were white women who were the receivers of me at the abortion clinic. They were the ones that shepherded me through, that guided and directed this young 14-year-old woman who had no idea what was going on really. And then at 18, they were the ones, not the exact same ones, but they were the ones that helped me again. And it was in that moment at 18 when the nurse said, you know, as she held my hand, I said, well, what should I do now? And she said, you're going to go on and live your life. And I knew that whoever these women were, whatever they were doing, I wanted to be a part of it. I can't tell you what their names were. I couldn't even identify them now, but it was their care and compassion that transformed the trajectory of my life. And so that's the background. But fast forward 5 years ago in Texas, I decided that I would be someone to help women who needed to get out of the state, because it was clear that they would have to get out of the state, to get them there. I'm clergy. I'm a licensed ordained interfaith minister. My master's is in world religions. And under the cloak of clergy, there's lots of things, especially in Texas or in the South, that you can do where there's a little buffer of protection. So I started escorting, accompanying women across the state. We would fly out of Texas and into Albuquerque, New Mexico, where they could get their reproductive care that they needed and that they wanted. The largest group I took at one time was 28 women. That's a very large group to shuttle through the airport, but I had a former life as a kindergarten teacher, so it was easy. I started this process of escorting and accompanying women to get the reproductive care they needed. And obviously, 2 years later, Roe, the decision by the Supreme Court ending Roe, happened. That required us to reimagine what we could do. And that meant we had to shrink the groups down, travel more often, and be more careful. So there it is. Resilience Reimagined emerged out of necessity and out of desire. So the groups got smaller. We started to figure out ways in which we needed to ensure women's safety, and we did it. And over the course of the last 5 years, September 1st was my 5-year anniversary of doing this work. I've taken over 400 women in the course of those 5 years, not stopping other than to pause to make sure safety issues were taken care of. And all of this happens in one day. Because if you can imagine, many women play the game of Tetris, of trying to put together childcare and work time, and all of the different logistics that we have to do because our lives are complex. So it became clear that we were going to have to be able to do this in one day. And so we leave at 5 a.m. and we fly, and everyone gets their procedure. We have lots of volunteer help, and then they fly back. And so what I have done as a result of this work, which wasn't what I thought I would be doing with my life, but what I have done was figure out a system that's scalable and can be replicated. And it has to be able to be that, because as we know, the South and many other states are going to or are facing the challenges of navigating freedom around reproductive health. And travel now has become one of the necessities. And the reality is that in this work, we can make what could be traumatic. If you imagine a woman who's never flown before, which is many of the women I've taken, they've never been out of their state. So having women step up and become the me so that they can do this is going to be critical in the next 3 to 5 years, because nothing is going to change for reproductive rights. If anything, it will get more complex, is what I like to say. And we have turned this traumatic idea into transformative experience by taking small groups of women into a state where they get their reproductive care. They're deeply held and cared for. They don't have to worry about logistics and Uber and eating, and that there's someone that cares for them so that they get back. I have had women write me and say, this time changed my life. I have stories that I can share with you of 2 women that met on a travel trip. One was going to be homeless and one was in an abusive relationship. They met on, we call them freedom flyers. They flew with us. They became fast friends. They were able to get an apartment together, share childcare, and a year and a half ago, both of them graduated from college. And so when we talk about resilience reimagined, the transformation that takes place as a result of intimate care and group travel is not the narrative out in the world, but it must become that. And I believe I have a way in which particularly white women can emerge and find their place back in the reproductive movement, because as a result of how things have evolved, I truly believe, and I've been in this work for 30 years, I truly believe white women have, unfortunately, not intentionally, been pushed to places outside of the movement where they don't see themselves as readily. And we have to change that, because first of all, my husband is white. I have two stepdaughters that are white that I raised. I mean, so I understand the complexities. And I have two sons that are white that also have become engaged in this movement as a result of their own curiosity. They didn't see themselves in the movement, but now they do. And so I understand the delicate nature in which we have to talk about being marginalized and displaced. But we must talk about it, because we cannot survive this onslaught unless we figure out how everyone can fit at the table.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that brings you to now, and that is how I got in front of you, is that I do this work. I understand that I have created a training program that will allow me to train women all over the country to do this very work, which will save the work, because
that is brilliant.
Because there is no other way. It has to be grassroots. Many white women over 40, and in my demographic, are also empty nesters.
Yeah.
Also have the opportunity and the means to do something that is purposeful and transformative. They just haven't been invited or trained to do that. But they have the capacity, they have the ability, they have the resilience. I see it, I know it, and I believe it. And so my soapbox these days is that the world will be saved by all of us being exactly who we are. The universe wastes nothing. And so I think it's critical that I speak about the importance of white women being invited back into the movement and seeing that they are needed, that they're necessary, that their skills, their talents, their abilities, their capacity, their availability is critical to certainly reproductive freedom travel. I know that for certain. So that kind of gives you how I got here and why I'm here.
I love your energy and 100% aligned. And I got into this racial equity work about a year and a half ago, specifically to say, I'm not doing one more white lady book study about Black lives. And it was post-election when the Black women creators pulled back and said, there's a reason we don't trust you. This is the reason.
Right.
And it was the best thing they ever did, because what I learned, of course, is that they were absolutely right. We white ladies don't know anything about building community. We know about competition and compromise. We don't know shit about boots on the ground.
Right. True.
And ever learning and never coming to a knowledge of the truth.
Right.
So this is a segue. The women that I worked with that brought me into this work are women in my age group when George Floyd happened, who saw what they couldn't unsee, whose mothers' hearts felt it, who were active in the changes that are being reversed in our women's lives now in this country, and didn't feel like we were protest frontline worthy or ready at that point. What can we do? And nobody knew. There was no organization. There was no structure. There was no anything. So we'd go and try and learn and leech off of Black women's wisdom until they couldn't stand it anymore, because it takes a long time to unlearn what you don't know you needed to learn.
Right.
And this is exactly what the 5 women I'm thinking about immediately
Mhm.
we're looking for in 2020. It was
Right,
tell us how to help, show
right,
us what you need,
right.
because we're here.
Right, right.
We are
And I think
absolutely
it's
here.
complex because Black women come to the table with their own shit. I mean, that's right. The anger, hostility, the distrust, whether justified or not, is irrelevant. They
Yeah.
do show up with that, right? And so the reality is we all need to do our work, but we have to do our work under tremendous pressure of change. All of
Yeah.
us do.
Yeah.
And so I think what tends to happen is that white women, because they feel uncomfortable about the way in which Black women show up, rightly so, um, they shrink back, right? And there's some shame. And
Uh-huh.
so it's I personally feel it's our responsibility to say there's no reason to have shame anymore. That who
Mhm.
you are, what you have, your experiences are needed and necessary. And if Black women don't come to the table open and ready to say that, and
Mhm.
they become this voice for demonizing women for who they are, and we can't do that, right? The
Yeah.
movement can't sustain itself that way.
Well, no. And when, we are all in this together, yes, we are. And oh, by the way, our boats are all punctured
Right,
at this
exactly,
point. So we're going to
exactly.
sink or swim.
Together, right,
Absolutely.
right, right. And this is why the work I've been working on, the book Reckless Rage that I'm working on, has emerged because all of us have this rage that is both fuel and also is what is exhausting us.
Yeah.
And the way in which we utilize that or don't utilize that needs to be tempered, tamed, and focused more like a laser.
Yeah.
And so I talk a lot about how training white women, because they have the capacity and the availability, is a feature, not a bug, right? And so we have to begin to paint that picture, to reimagine our places on this boat.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I think that that is part of what has developed the training for me, is that I understand the complexity and nuance that happens for different women of different cultures with different lived experiences.
I love it. I love it. So at a foundational level,
Mm-hmm.
white women like me who don't know what they don't know, what is the most important thing we could do or undo about ourselves in our inner learning to prepare for participating in something active like this?
Right. The cohorts that I'm developing for launch in February,
Mhm.
there is a rigorous interview process because I want I can train anybody to do what I do,
Yeah.
right? But it takes a certain type of person
Mhm.
that has the archetype of being willing to do whatever it takes to get to the end goal, right? And so, one of the things that I think is important for white women to unlearn is that there's this message that they don't have what it takes to do what needs to be done, right? That wasn't the message of the early 70s, right? That's the message now.
Yes.
And we must take responsibility for pushing that message on you. And
Mhm.
I've bumped up against a lot of white women that collude with the anger, rage, and righteousness that Black women have. And I
Mhm.
need that to stop.
Ah, yeah.
I need them to be able to stand in their own power.
Mhm.
That's what white women need to be able to do. Black women have figured that out. And
Yes.
so they perhaps have developed an oversense of power. And
Yeah.
so I think that what is necessary is that white women have to begin to stand in their power. And I think that it is, can in some ways be terrifying. And in some ways can cut off the ways in which they relate to each other.
Uh-huh.
And so they have to stop being willing to collude with their smallness.
Uh-huh. Yep.
And so that if I can get them to let that piece go, then
Mhm.
what emerges is this strength and this capacity. White women navigate very complex lives, but it doesn't become a cumulative knowledge. And
Mhm.
I'm not sure what that is, but I do know that the way you know what you know is by implementing it in real time.
Mhm.
And so in this work, after they finish this training, which is just as much about self-development as it is about learning how to do travel companions, we call them travel champions.
Uh-huh.
It is just as much about developing the strength, the nerve, and the conviction that they do admire in Black women,
Yes.
but they don't realize they have it as well. And
Yes.
that's because they haven't been in situations where they have had to see it. And so
Right.
this work after this training puts them right there in situations where in real time they get to demonstrate and prove to themselves that they have the skill, the ability, and the confidence and the clarity and conviction to do what needs to be done.
Yeah.
So that's probably what I would say, is that I need women, white women, to begin to unlearn this fear-based way of shrinking,
Yep.
and to begin to amplify this way in which they have the strength, the tenacity, and the courage to show up. But they have to be given the opportunity to do that. This program provides that.
Is the opportunity. This is the practice.
This is the practice, right?
Oh,
Because you
God, I
don't know
love
you
that.
have it until you have to demonstrate it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that is exactly what I do with women, and particularly trying to help white women to uh I call it the speak up starter pack. How to find your voice, use your voice, and
Right,
then act on what
right,
you
right,
know, right?
right, right.
And
Exactly.
it is a particular kind. Women usually, when I've seen white women pull back from, it's because our culture, patriarchal culture, is to keep us small and safe. Don't
Mhm.
forget safe
Right,
and silent.
right,
It's
right,
a conspiracy of silence,
right,
of don't make waves, be still, be quiet, and don't make waves.
right.
And we're so afraid of not doing it perfectly or right or saying it
Mm,
right. And the Black culture, we'll just call it what it is. They just call it out,
right,
call you in,
right,
right?
right,
And
right,
we're hypersensitive, but
right,
we are also, it's, to me, the foundational thing is for women of privilege, whether it's whatever your privilege is, we all have
right.
some kind.
Which we all
Mine
have.
happens to be the color of my skin,
Right,
to use that privilege for good.
right,
There's
right,
your reparation. You want to make a
right,
reparation in your life?
right,
You want to quit feeling shame and guilt for what your forefathers did? Here you go. Step
right,
up,
right.
speak
It's an
up.
opportunity, but it also is a practice, right?
Yes.
It is a practice, right? We are never going to be perfect. That's why we practice, right? It is that which we practice consistently. It's practice that makes perfect. It's not perfection that you do in a practice,
Well, and it is that builds the muscle to
right?
do more.
Right, right. So I mean, I think that it's an interesting time that we're in. It's a fascinating time if we're willing to look at it from the perception and perspective of transformation and triumph
Right.
rather than tragedy and traumatic.
Mhm.
So we really have to be willing, and that is not an easy thing to do when you've been wearing a particular prescription
Yeah.
for a long time.
Yeah. True. That's
So
so
we are, so I think we are in interesting times, and the way to navigate interesting, challenging crisis times, which it has always been and will always be,
true.
is to unify oneself
Mhm.
and then to move from a place of wholeness, not from a place of separation. Your
Yep.
challenges are no different than mine. They
Yep.
are challenges, and that's the connecting link.
Yep.
And so there's lots of work to be done, and I think that we can begin to stop being tired and fearful when we own the fact that the rest of the story is ours to produce.
Yes. Yes.
Which is why in our work we say, we will get women to care by any means necessary, because no policy, no power, and no politician can keep us from doing it. Right?
Right.
So it doesn't really matter anymore who is in the administration. We will find a way. Doesn't matter what the laws are. None of that matters anymore. right?
Yeah.
Because they will always be what they will be. They will always change. They will rise with the tides, but it's irrelevant
Mhm.
because we all come from this ancestral stock that
Mhm.
is stronger than we could ever conceive of. So it
Mhm.
doesn't really matter what the policies are. And the understanding that, yes, of course, at some point there is a high risk factor. But as
Mhm.
I tell people all the time, we already know it's not personal. We already know how the end happens. We're going to die. Some of us
Mhm.
will die quietly in our beds with our loved ones around, some of us in a car accident, and some of us doing the work that we were guided and directed and destined to do. So we don't have to be afraid of that anymore. We know what the end is, right? And I always say, if I die in pursuit of purpose and for the higher good of others, then it will have been a life well lived.
Yes. Yep.
Everything else is irrelevant, right? There are so many women, Black, brown, white, that sacrificed so that I could sit here. I have the life that I have because women sacrificed for me. So the
Yep.
rent for being here is that I be willing to sacrifice for those that I will never meet. And that is the other piece that I think is critical for women to understand. The work we're doing now isn't for us. I've already had my kids. I don't even have a uterus. I don't even,
Right.
it doesn't even matter to me,
Exactly.
right? We're not fighting for us. Our
Mhm.
movement right now tends to be very selfish and self-centered. And
Mhm.
the reason the opposition has gotten as far as it has is because their purpose is bigger than themselves. And
Yes.
that is what drives them. And if we can tap into understanding that what I'm doing, I'm never, the work I'm doing is for great grandchildren that I don't even know and will never even meet. And if we don't start introducing that into our concept of the work that we're doing, we will not be able to sustain it.
Mhm. Mhm.
And
It
so I
is
think that's
legacy
really
work.
important to understand.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we can be less fearful when we know that my life has been well lived and will continue to be well lived if I live a life on purpose.
So let me ask you a question. As you're talking and I'm thinking about, what I know, what little bit I know now about the Underground Railroad,
Mm-hmm.
that the stories from around here, the historical data says that that there was a little farm in New Hampshire where people would arrive, and he
Yep.
had a brother who had a farm in Vermont, closer to
Yes.
Canada,
Yep.
and his son, who was 18, would get woken up at 2 o'clock in the morning with strict instructions. There's a man in the back of the thing. You go right to your uncle's house. You don't stop anywhere. You don't talk to anybody, and you don't
Right.
ask him what his name is.
Right.
You weren't here. You don't know anything. This is all
Right.
you get to know. That young man didn't know until years later that that was part of a network. Okay.
Yes.
Part of the reason the Underground Railroad worked, which is why the Tubman Travel Project got my attention, is because of the shut your damn mouth.
That's right.
You go to
That's
church on Sunday, you're the governor on Tuesday, and at 2 a.m. you're running freedom trains, okay?
right.
That's
And
how
it
it
is very
worked.
much like that because
That was
the
my
way
question.
our travel project works is we send the modern day messenger, we send one text message. They meet us at the airport. They've never met me. They don't even know me.
Oh my
They
gosh.
don't even know my last name. They have a
Yeah,
picture of me, right?
right.
I know nothing about them, never have met them, don't know which clinic of the 5 clinics here or their last name. My job is to get them where they need to go.
Thank you.
And that is exactly the same thing that Harriet Tubman understood. And being willing to do it by sacrifice and by any means necessary because she understood that there was something greater taking
Mm-hmm.
place.
Mm-hmm.
And she didn't interfere with that. She created the condition so that could happen. And so I will be training women to understand that your role is not to coddle women. It's not to be worried or uncertain. Your role is to get women to the care they need and get them back to where they came from so they can live their lives, which is exactly what Harriet Tubman did.
Yeah, I love that. So the Vietnam women who were
Yep.
doing that, they would they never took notes because that could get you killed.
Yep.
So they saw things, then their housekeeper role or whatever role they were, they took the information in their head every day when they left and went back and reported back to where they needed to. They only ever knew two other names. They knew the person right before them and the person right after them by first name. And those names changed frequently. So that
Yes.
if they ever got interrogated, they truly knew nothing.
That is exactly, it's so funny.
Sweet.
It is such a life experience repeating itself. Of all of the women, I couldn't tell you, if they walked past me today, I couldn't tell you their names, right? I couldn't tell you where they lived. I couldn't tell you I couldn't, because I don't have that information.
Mm.
So it is exactly the same. And when we get back on the plane, I tell them, you act like you've never seen me, because when that airplane door opens, I don't know what I will meet on the other side, but I know it's not for you to meet it.
Uh-huh.
And so I say, we're saying goodbye before this plane takes off.
Yep.
I will be sitting here if you need me while we're flying. But then once you land, I want you to go on and live your life. And I never, ever see them again. So it is exactly the same.
Now, in this trackable world we have, and
Mhm.
even in this podcast, I'm going, do I want to black that screen out? Because I don't want you or this project to be at risk. How are you doing this? How are you going to get
Well,
the word out and keep
so
that?
therein lies the spiritual piece for me, right?
Okay.
Because the reality is that this work, in order to do this
To
work,
happen.
it costs donations. It requires donations. And
Yep.
if everything was secret and no one knew, then I wouldn't be able to do it, right? So I made the decision with my husband and my kids a long time ago to be as public as possible, because I understand that if I wasn't, there wouldn't be a Tubman Travel Project.
Right.
And so if you were to Google me, you'd see a New York Times story, because I had the New York Times fly with me and follow me to see what I did. There would be, I'm on MSNBC with Reverend Al Sharpton. It's everywhere.
Yep.
But that was a choice and decision that I made for the
Yeah.
good of what was bigger than me. So I have nothing that is secret. I held a press conference and invited the opposition so they would understand that I'm not afraid of you, that I'm going to do what I need to be doing because I'm called to do it. So I don't move from that place, because there is no place that if someone wanted to find out, that they couldn't. The only way to deal with that is head on, openly,
Mhm.
and in front of. If you want to take me to jail, then you do that. But it will not stop, because I've trained many people all over the country, all over everywhere, to do what I do. So you can't get us all.
I love that. I
So
love
that's
that.
how I deal with that, is that so now I never have to worry about it. Now I keep those that I travel with, I contain their safety and security. But I made the decision a long time ago that this was bigger than me. And so there's no need for me to fear or concern myself with being found out, especially by staying in the open.
Right. Right.
It's sort of a hiding in plain sight kind of thing.
There is something about that. I've always said it, I can do anything if I know God's in it. And
Right.
if it's a calling, it pulls you and I worked with highly functioning addicts and alcoholics for 35 years. So I know a lot of these
Right.
things. And one of the things is, you stay on the firing line of life with these motives, and
Right.
God will keep you unharmed. I've had people threaten my life, and I've said, well, I lived with a Vietnam vet who was a sniper in Vietnam 2 years. What are you going to do to me?
That's
Really? You don't
exactly.
scare me.
That's right. That's right. And there is a way in which you cross that line. We say in my spiritual community, pain pushes until vision pulls. And
Ooh,
when you're pulled by that vision, even if you wanted to stop, you couldn't.
exactly.
Right. And so you understand that. And there is a grace and a humility,
Yeah,
understanding I of myself couldn't do very little, but there
right.
is something guiding and directing me. I call it God. You can call it what you want.
Mhm.
That force, that energy will guide and it will protect you. It will be your North Star.
Yes. Yes.
So it becomes really clear and easy at that point.
Mhm. Yeah. I love that. So now tell us, white women, how do we put, and I'm not worried about our inner work, I can work with them on. Once we get them to say, I ain't afraid,
Right,
okay,
right, right.
then what are next steps?
So then they enter the cohort, and the way this program is designed is that a cohort is made up of 12 or 15 women that may be all over the country or may be in your home state, but they become your community because they are doing the same thing, right? In their city or their town. And so you get to, we build that community together, right? Because they have gone through this same experience of training. They are about to go out in the world and do the same thing you were doing. The community emerges as a result of this cohort. And that is a powerful thing. And so I am very intentional in the interview process and then the piecing together of the cohort, because I want these become bonds for life, because you're doing something that's bigger than just you. And so that's then what happens. And so they go through the 10-week training, and then they also do with me an in-person practicum where I take them through travel, a day of travel. So they actually know exactly this is not theory based. This is in real life, right? By the end of 10 weeks, you then join me and travel with me. So you know the dynamics, right? And so it becomes real life. And then I work with them afterward in their city, because obviously, what's needed in Mississippi is different than what's needed in Florida. The logistics, the plans, the way in which you structure your Tubman Travel program is very unique to what is on the ground happening. And this is the beauty of it, is that because the women are trained, but they're working in their community, they know, oh, I know I can tap this community. I know I can get them here. I know I've got 2 volunteer friends that'll pick up from the airport, right? They're on the ground. This is not national level. It's not even state level. It is on the ground in your community. And you're tapping into the resources and the navigating systems that you know well. It becomes unstoppable then, right? Because they become trained and then they're out there in the world.
Yes, it is exactly what the doctor ordered.
Right. We're building the reproductive freedom movement of the future, right? By doing this, we're creating a model that's never been created before, because it answers the trouble that has emerged. It is the answer. It is the antidote.
Yes, yes.
So
And
that's
once
what happens.
women learn how to coalesce in community together that way, then if and when this isn't necessary, then it will be handed on to our daughters
That's right.
and
That's
daughters
the
as
idea.
this is your survival skill,
That's right.
whatever
And so
comes.
now we have just by virtue of necessity, created the generations after us, right? We leave competence in our wake, because now we have trained, we know, our daughters know, their daughters will know.
Oh,
And that's how they did it. That's how I ended up here. I'm sure my ancestors had that in mind, and yours as well. And so we are just returning back to what always was.
I cry. No, white woman tears just makes me cry.
Just
Touches my
real
heart.
emotional tears. Yeah. And so that is, I'm really grateful to have the opportunity to speak with you about this, because it is, I believe, where we create a future that's unstoppable, and we have to.
Right.
Must.
Right.
The future is too important to be held hostage by fear.
Yes. And we are, in Africa, I had a colleague in Africa, and we were talking, it was during 2020. I talked to her then about doing some kind of collaborative work with her, because they had a thing over there called the grandmother benches or something. And mental health workers are very few and very necessary. And so they would train the grandmothers in the community, and would be on a certain bench at a certain time, certain days a week. And whatever your problem was, you could come
That is
and
powerful.
incredibly powerful. changed, I mean, and continued a trajectory that still exists today. They wanted to bring it into New York City. They wanted to
Oh,
migrate it into other places, and they did for a youth program in New York City.
right,
But in the United States, grandmothers are discarded. We are
right,
not revered. But
right.
but in their culture, the grandmothers are the keepers of the wisdom. They're the
That's
wisdom keepers and the traditions and the trusted ones
right.
that people could bring their problems to and would
That's
get
right.
resources.
Right. That's right. I mean, I was raised by my grandmother, so I understand the value of grandmothers. But what I do believe that in this movement, because we have gone the direction of training the feminists of the future, we've misplaced the women that have the wisdom and the capacity. And so my job is to raise that back up, not instead of, but in connection with, right? And so that women that have moved into a new stage of life see their place, take their place, and allow their place to be amplified, shining a light for everyone else. That's really our role as we mature.
Mhm.
And we can do that. And I think that this movement will have to lean into that.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
Well,
yeah.
that gives me hope for a legacy I can actually leave my
Exactly.
granddaughters, right?
Exactly.
Instead of, oh my
That is
God, ain't it awful?
exactly it. That
Yeah,
is that when you enter this cohort training, you begin to create and leave a legacy that lasts
yeah,
forever.
yeah.
So this has been absolutely wonderful to have time talking with you about this. And I hope you're as you move through your season, this season that you're doing these podcasts, that you get a chance to bear witness to all of the reimagining of resilience that you can, because that's exactly what you get to do.
So how can people contribute? Let's talk about money.
Sure, let's talk about it. They can go to tubmantravelproject.org.
Mhm.
We have a fund set up, and we have a unique design where we have a sliding scale, because we found that, and we have a way in which those that donate can donate to connect with one woman who needs the travel, who then reports back and shares her
Oh, wow.
experience, right? So what this does is demystifies donations.
Yes.
And that is the next wave as well, is that we have lots of people willing to donate, and they do, but then they never know, well, what happened, or I trust that it went, but we have taken the model and turned it on its head, because the other part of what happens for a donor is that those that receive get an opportunity to express gratitude and appreciation for the gift. It's a
Oh,
circular
that's so
movement,
healing.
right? It's a certain,
Yeah.
and I cannot tell you how many women are so grateful to be able to write a thank you card and know that it gets mailed, right? Because they have that gratitude, and they
Right.
get to express that gratitude for what they've been given. It is transformational, right? And then the other thing that the women do is that if they have $5 or $2 or whatever, they donate it to give to the next woman, right? Everyone has something to give, and everyone has something to receive. So
Mhm.
when they donate to the Tubman Travel, they can opt in to be able to receive a message from the woman that received the gift,
Oh, that's adorable.
which is amazingly transformational. So I tell people they can go to tubmantravel.org. There's a fund link, and they can donate. And obviously we're on Act Blue, and all of the places where a nonprofit that's in good standing is found. But that's where they can go.
I am never going to stop talking about this.
I'm so grateful to hear that, because I think that
Oh my
it's
gosh.
not just about the work that I'm doing, it's about the work that we are all going to be doing.
Yeah.
That's the mission now.
Are there other pockets of this happening in the country that nobody knows about and that shall
There,
remain
there
faceless?
definitely could
Have to
be,
be, right?
in my research and in my work, and I speak, on national stages all over. I haven't found any organization doing it consistently and on the scale in which we are,
Got
because
it.
of all the reasons we just
Right.
described.
Visibility.
So my hope is that in 2 years, I'm able to say, yes, actually, there's a Tubman Travel Project in Alabama and Mississippi, and everywhere you
Yeah.
can imagine, right?
Yes.
That's the dream, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I want to do whatever I can to help you reach that
Well,
dream.
thank you so much just having me and just having this conversation, as all real, authentic, connective conversations do. It is healing. So
Is there
thank you.
anything that you think we need to know or hear that we haven't touched on?
No, I would love for people they can go to tubmantravel.org. They can go to Be a Champion if they're interested in getting information about when the cohort opens or getting on the mailing list so they can find out more information. I'll certainly share the link with you, or I'll have my assistants in the links so that your listeners can connect.
Okay, that sounds wonderful. Thank you so much, Reverend Erika, for your time.
Thank
You have
you
been a
so much, Kim.
joy.
Absolutely a blast. I really appreciate it.
Sweet.
Take care.